Yes, Ms Finnis.
Thank you, Your Honour. Your Honour, I call witness BAP.
Mr BAS is still on our screens.
Thank you, Mr BAS. We'll close off the connection.
Mr BAP, will you take an oath on the Bible or an affirmation?
Excuse me, an affirmation, thank you.
Affirmation. Would you repeat after me?
Yep.
I do solemnly, sincerely and truly
I do solemnly, sincerely and truly
declare and affirm that the evidence I shall give to this Royal Commission
the evidence that I shall give to this Royal Commission
shall be the truth,
shall be the truth,
the whole truth,
and
nothing but the truth.
nothing but the truth.
Thank you. Take a seat, please. Yes, Ms Finnis.
Thank you, Your Honour. You've been given the pseudonym BAP.
Yep, that's correct.
And you've provided a statement dated the 11th of November this year.
Yes.
Are the contents of that statement true and correct?
Yes.
I invite you.
It'll become Exhibit 28-7.
Thank you, Your Honour. I invite you, sir, to read your statement.
This statement is made. Excuse me. This statement is made by me accurately sets out the evidence that I am prepared to give to the Royal Commission into institutional response to child sexual abuse. This statement is true and correct to the best of my knowledge and belief. Where directed speech is referred to in this statement, it is provided in the words or I had 2 sisters and 3 brothers. I was the 3rd child. We had a fairly difficult family life. My father had a bad accident at work, and as a result, he had chronic pain and started to drink heavily, which caused conflict with Mum. It wasn't the best family life, and we were struggling. We had no money, and it was always a battle. My parents were Catholic, but I wouldn't say they were overly religious. St Alethea Girls and Boys School, Ballarat East. In 1960, I attended St Alethea Girls School and Boys School in Ballarat East. The school was co-educational for children from prep to grade 2. After grade 2, the boys went to St Alethea Boys School, which was on the same street but on the other side of St Alethea's church. I remember I started off really happy at school. I loved to learn and I felt safe with the teachers there. Towards the end of grade 2, I remember all the boys were going on to St Alethea's school, were taken into a room with a big table by the principal's sister, Ambrose. I remember her telling her saying they were private and they belonged to us and should be kept, and we should keep them private. I remember her words to the effect, and they're only for you. At that time, I didn't understand what that meant. It just made me embarrassed. Excuse me. Now, St Alethea's Boys School, Ballarat East, Brother Fitzgerald. In 1964, I started grade 3 at St Alethea's Boys School, or St Alethea's. I was 8 years old. Brother Gerald Leo Fitzgerald was my grade 3 teacher. Brother Fitzgerald used to make the whole class of kids put their heads and hands on the desk and go to sleep. The kids used to get into trouble if they looked up. Brother Fitzgerald then picked a kid and made him sit on his knee behind the desk. Very often, that kid was me. When I sat on Brother Fitzgerald's knee, he used to tell me to go to sleep, and then he would kiss me and rub my genitals through my shorts and against him. I wore shorts and sandals for the whole year because my family were really poor. Sometimes he also kissed my face, neck and lips. I did not understand what he was doing to me at the time, but I was terrified of him. Brother Fitzgerald did this extremely frequently to me. I also saw him doing it to other kids as well. I don't remember how many times it happened to me, but he seemed to like me, and I was always chosen a lot throughout the year to sit on his knee. I saw Brother Best belting other kids. I can't remember him belting me. I remember him hitting other kids with a big black ruler and a cane duster. I was always like the pet. He sometimes took me into the kitchen where the teachers ate when no one else was around and gave me food. I remember he gave me tomato soup. One day I picked wild flowers during the weekend to bring to Brother Fitzgerald because he was a naturalist. He loved flora and fauna. That was how much control he had over me. I brought the flowers into the classroom and sat them on a big table at the back. I never gave the flowers to Brother Fitzgerald. These flowers sat there for weeks and they wilted away as time passed. Some days Brother Fitzgerald let the class out early. On these days he used to wait at the incinerator at the back corner of the school grounds. As we left the classroom, Brother Bess used to pick a kid and ask him to pick up papers lying on the ground and put them in the incinerator. I used to try and hide in the crowd of kids as we left, but Brother Fitzgerald often picked me. When I picked up the papers and gave them to Brother Fitzgerald, he would generally kiss me on the mouth and cuddle me and say thank you. In winter, Brother Fitzgerald would tell me to go down to the boiler room to put wood in the boiler. I can remember the room and the steps that led down there. There was a steel rail and the steps were blue stone. He would come down. All that I remember is him being on the steps in a white shirt. I remember Brother Fitzgerald would take us over to the church for confession. I'm not sure of how many times. I think it was about 3 or 4 times a month. We were made to kneel and wait for our turn to go into the black box, the confessional. I remember biting pieces of wood out of the pew in front of me while we were waiting. I was horrified to go into this black box and face a silhouette voice asking me if I had done anything wrong. Another occasion, the school took us to Ballarat for a picnic. Brother Fitzgerald separated our class from the rest of the students. He took us to a secluded beach where he made us take off all our clothes and swim while he watched us with binoculars. Towards the middle of grade 3, I started to skip school. I used to hide in the stormwater drains and dig tunnels at the Lamberris Oval. Ballarat, that is, until it was time to go home. When I was in grade 4, my mum found out that I had been skipping school. My mum said that she would write me a letter and say I had been sick. I gave this letter in a sealed envelope. She gave me the letter in a sealed envelope. I gave this to the grade 4 teacher, not knowing what was written in it. My grade 4 teacher was a female lay teacher. She confronted me with this letter and stood me up in front of the class and announced that my mum had said I was wagging school. I felt like my mum had betrayed my trust. I felt alone and completely isolated after this. I felt that all hope from me to tell anybody about anything was gone. I was never able to be a normal child at school. I was always in fear of something happening to me. Brother Best didn't just take my soul, he crushed it. What he did to me was put fear and horror into me. Brother Robert Best. In 1968, Brother Robert Best was my choir teacher in the grade 6 classroom at St. Lepius. I remember him being tall and always wearing a long black tunic with white collar. He had a presence about him. He had a presence about him as he walked around the school. I remember seeing Brother Best belting kids and dragging them around. One day I went to get a ball from under the bikes that were hanging up in the bike shed. Brother Best called me over and said words to the effect, "You're not allowed to go near the bike shed, the bikes." He pulled out a leather strap from under his uniform. It was approximately 400 millimetres long and about 20 millimetres thick. He said something like, "Hold out your hand. If you pull away, you will get double." He gave me 6 cuts, 3 on each hand. Then he said, "You will write down 100 times, I will not go near the bike shed." From then on most occasions that Brother Best saw me in the schoolyard that year, I got 6 cuts and he doubled the amount of lines that I had to write. Generally, when I brought him what I had written, he would say something like, "That is not enough." And he would give me 6 more cuts, and I was petrified of Brother Best. The only thing he taught me was to be petrified of him. One weekend, I went to the Ballarat East swimming pool. When I went to school on the Monday morning, Brother Best approached me and accused me of talking to girls at the Ballarat East swimming pool. He belted me for that. I never went back to that swimming pool again, and I felt like he had eyes everywhere. That year I was part of the choir. Brother Best was the choir master. The choir had a tiered standing arrangement, and I stood in one of the back rows. Brother Best came around to listen to my voice. He came up and stood behind me and put his hand in my pocket and fondled my genitals. No one was allowed to turn around. After my time in the choir, Brother Best continued to physically abuse me. He pushed me face first into a wall and shattered one of my front teeth. Eventually I got an abscess on it and the tooth was taken out. I had to get a false one put in, and after this happened, I was not physically or sexually abused by Brother Best again. By the time I left St. Lepius, I couldn't talk, couldn't communicate, and was totally isolated. I don't remember telling anybody about the physical or sexual abuse until 2011. I recently spoke to my younger brother who told me that when I was still at school, I told him to watch out for Brother Fitzgerald. I don't remember saying that. Secondary school. When it was time to go to secondary school, my mum tried to get me into St. Paul's Technical School near the Ballarat railway station. I was petrified about going there because it was another Christian Brothers school. We ended up at the Ballarat North Technical School. That school was a whole different world. There was no violence from the teachers like there was at St. Lepius. When I was in Form 1, I was put into a class with other troubled and difficult kids. I was there because I couldn't read, write or say anything. I couldn't talk. This went on until I was in Form 3. The only thing I learned at this school was how to hide better from the teachers and other kids. Hiding was a self-protection mechanism that was ingrained in me. When I was 14, my family was split up because my father was drinking heavily and was getting aggressive towards my mother. He couldn't work and he couldn't look after the family. I was sent to Mildura to live with my auntie. My siblings were sent to institutions. I lived with my auntie in Mildura for about 9 months. My auntie's family were devout Catholics and they made me go to church every weekend. I hated going to church. I used to say to them that I will go to the morning mass on my own while they go to the afternoon one. However, I ended up going horse riding with friends most mornings. When I said I was at Mass, because I was away from St Alepius, in Ballarat, I felt much safer. After I left Mildura, I was sent back to Ballarat and I never went back to secondary school again. Life after school and the impact of abuse. At one point, I was run over by 2 cars. I don't remember what happened, but my sister said it was a pretty bad accident. The only thing I can recall that I woke up in hospital. The police said that it was a hit and run, but they didn't ask me anything about what happened. They said the only thing that stopped me from being killed was that I had 3 jumpers on. I think I must have either jumped in front of the car or laid on the road. After I recovered from the injuries, I got another job for a few years. Things were the same for me. I kept to myself at all times. I had trouble with my boss because of my issues with alcohol. One time he caught me drinking in the toilet at work. I thought I was really smart and hid the can, but he found it and brought it to me. He wanted to sack me. But because I was a good worker, he sent me across to the other side of the factory where they needed somebody. That didn't stop me from drinking. I was not earning enough money to fund my drinking, so I used to collect empty Coke bottles from around the factory and cash them in. When I was around 16, 17, I started night school at the School of Mines Ballarat, hoping to get a better job. I didn't even get through the first year because I couldn't spell or even understand the words that I had written down. At 19, I lost my driving licence because I had been drinking and driving. One day I drove very fast down Eureka Street, Ballarat. I drove about halfway, hit a telephone pole, lost control of the car and crashed through the front fence of a house. The ambulance and police could not believe that I lived through such a crash. The only injury that I got was some glass in my head. They said the only thing that saved me was that I didn't have my seatbelt on and was thrown into the back seat. The front of the car was crushed. It took me a long time to realise that these accidents were actually suicide attempts. I think I was trying to be heard. My mum said to me, BAP, you've got 9 lives, you must be a cat. I couldn't even tell her why I was doing these things. Over the years I had a number of jobs, but my drinking was always a problem. After a while I started taking drugs as well. It was always the same pattern with work. I would find a good job and drink too much. Sometimes I had good bosses who thought I was a good worker and tried to promote me. But every time this happened, I had to leave because I couldn't face being in the spotlight. I was married in 1984. In the late 1980s, I tried to take my life at home with a rifle. I was really distraught and completely broken down. At the last second, I pulled away the rifle. At the last second, I pulled away the fire. At the last second, I pulled away and fired it out of the top of the window, not knowing that my wife was in the car outside the window. If I had lowered the rifle, I could have killed her. I will live with this for the rest of my life. On reflection, another suicide attempt was in Melbourne when I drove up the wrong side of the roadway. I started near the Waterside Hotel in the city. I travelled at high speed along what I think would be called King's Way and got about 1 kilometre when I hit a taxi. I stopped to see if the driver was okay and continued to Frankston where I live. I was charged with dangerous driving and failed to stop at an accident some days later. In 1990, after spending about a decade at sea as a first-grade steward in the Merchant Navy, I bought a block of land near Bendigo with the money I had. I tried to live a life away from the world. I remember hanging blankets on the windows of my home because I thought that someone was watching me. My wife and I had our first child in December 1991 and another 3 children in the next 8 years of our marriage. I tried to give up the drugs and alcohol to focus on the kids. In August 2006, my marriage fell apart and I had difficult time going through the court proceedings. Fighting to have custody of my children. The court process took nearly 2 years. I had trouble trusting my own solicitor and I thought he was out to get me. The trust issue was unbelievable. I sacked the solicitor and engaged another firm in Ballarat. In the end, the children lived with me and provided me with great support. If I'd lost them, I'm sure I wouldn't be alive today. Civil proceedings. In 2011, I spoke about my abuse for the first time to Vivian Waller of Waller Legal. I called her because I heard on the news that Brother Best had been convicted for sexually abusing young boys. When I told her about what had happened to me, I broke down on the phone. She then referred me to the Centre Against Sexual Assault in Ballarat, CASA. Sometime later, Vivian Waller explained to me that litigation would be difficult because time limits had run out. Additionally, it would be difficult to sue the Catholic-related entities. She told me that she could act on my behalf of many clients who have been abused by the Christian Brothers. She said she had been having some discussions with lawyers for the Christian Brothers and the lawyers for their insurers to try to design an alternative dispute resolution process instead of going to court. Sometime later, I commenced this alternative dispute resolution process against the Christian Brothers. Part of the process involved the Christian Brothers disclosing information about brothers who were alleged to have committed sexual offences. Part of the process also involved going to mediation chaired by an independent barrister. In November 2012, I went to the mediation. I was represented by Vivian Waller and barrister Tim Segal, who were my legal advisors. There was another barrister there who was the mediator. Andrea Lockhart from CASA came with me as my support person. I sat in a separate room with Andrea whilst my legal advisors met with the Christian Brothers. It felt very clinical. The first offer from the Christian Brothers was very low and was $50,000, inclusive of all legal costs. My legal advisors told me not to accept this and they negotiated this figure up. It took a few hours until the Christian Brothers eventually offered me what they said was their final offer of $80,000. I remember Tim telling me to take my time in making the decision to accept this offer. I felt like I was given plenty of time to think about it, and I still appreciate that to this day. I signed the release, bringing my case to an end. I accepted this offer because I felt the choices given to me was either accept the settlement or take it through the court system. I really had no choice because I couldn't go through the court system again. I've been told by my legal advisors that we were happy to run my case, but realistically there were a lot of difficult legal issues and hurdles that may cause that my case would be difficult. I felt as though the Christian Brothers did not recognise that I was a human being, although through the mediation process, I did not feel as if they acknowledged the difficulties I was going through. I was not after an apology from the Christian Brothers for the abuse. I felt that the settlement was absolutely meaningless and I had no feelings of any sense of achievement. I felt like I had just been abused again. I really wish it hadn't ever gone through this process, or I hadn't gone through this process. In March 2014, Vivian Waller wrote to me again out of the blue. She told me that she had been following the evidence that the Christian Brothers gave in the Victorian Parliamentary Inquiry in 2013. She told me it came to light that the Christian Brothers had been on notice of Brother Fitzgerald inappropriately sexual contact with children since the early 1950s. She said she wrote to the Christian Brothers expressing her disappointment that this material had not been disclosed as part of the alternative dispute resolution process of my case. She said she thought that this was not fair to me. I instructed her to act on my behalf again. She has asked the Christian Brothers for more correspondence on the basis of that document showing early complaints about Brother Fitzgerald. Should have been disclosed as part of the agreed process. Although the Christian Brothers have indicated they are prepared to discuss this matter, Vivian Waller tells me that they have not yet made any further offer to me. This matter is still ongoing. Police. After September 2013, I went to the Ballarat police station and stood in front of the station. I really didn't know what I was doing. A detective named Tim Argyle came out of the station. I had met Detective Argyle before at the Casa men's group. He saw me and asked me who I was. I told him my name and started to tell him about what happened to me, bit by bit. He then said, "Well, we'll take you around to the other part of the police station." He tried to sit me down, but I couldn't do it. I broke right down. Tim said to me, "Look, you're not ready. I understand. Look, I'll just show you the rooms and what happens, and when you're ready, come back." And Tim made me feel very comfortable and safe. After that, I went back outside of the station and rang Andrea Lockhart from Casa. I met with her and told her about what had happened to me. Working with Casa has been really helpful. They have opened my mind up and showed me how to think and how to analyse. I had 8 sessions with Serene Gunn after another senior counsellor at Casa. I had never been through anything like this. She knew how to talk to me and how to get me to understand and open up. In July 2014, I made a statement to the police regarding my experiences at St Alepius. This matter is ongoing. After speaking to Casa, I felt that getting to the actual police interview was very easy for me. I think it was good that I didn't talk about it early on as I wouldn't have gotten it out. I think there is a process you have to go through and it takes time. Personal impacts of abuse. The abuse changed me from a happy boy who enjoyed learning to someone who couldn't learn and didn't want to go to school. These years at primary school supposed to teach me how to read and write and to be confident. It was supposed to give me the skill set for the next part of my schooling. These were all stolen from me. Instead, Brother Fitzgerald and Brother Best have put me in a nightmare world of self-destruction and distrust. I struggle with alcohol and substance abuse. I've tried to stop it, but I want it. I needed it. It made me function, and it was the only tool that I had in the box that would allow me to deal with the pain. In a way, I wouldn't be here if it wasn't for the alcohol. I don't know why I was like I was. I thought I was mad. Alcohol gave me confidence, and it was the thing that brought me out. I felt good because I was interacting with people. The downside of the alcohol was horrific. When I was sick from drinking and taking drugs, I felt overwhelmed with feelings of remorse. I would hide myself away. This was an ongoing cycle. I have found it hard to be affectionate with people. I have always kept my feelings hidden. Isolation has been with me for so long that I don't understand what what else doesn't understand what anything else is anymore. It is frustrating to try to push down these walls and reach out because it is so big to beat. CASA has helped me knock down these walls down, but they always grow back. That's something that I've learned very well, and if I don't work on it, it'll just regress back. I've been slack in some areas and I've seen myself slipping back. I also find it very hard to concentrate. I have short-term memory loss, I have trouble keeping appointments and keeping track of days and times. My ability to sit and learn has just gone. Nothing stays in my head. I could read one word this week, but the next week I wouldn't even know how to say it. Flashbacks happen to me when there is something that reminds me of the past, like school uniforms, buildings, names of places, people, suburbs, streets. I've never driven past St. Levis. I'll always take a detour. I never knew why I was doing this. After going to CASA, I started to join the dots together. I get shocks through my body when I'm caught off guard or when I'm confronted with these things. People have said that I come across confident, but they don't see the battle that rages on inside me. I have never read a real book, and I don't understand the meaning of having a good night's sleep. My children come into the world, my focus changed. Since the children were born, I have found some purpose in life. I've been able to take the children to playgroup, kindergarten and teacher interviews. I even got dressed up as Santa one year. This part of my life is what has kept me alive and going forward. My children are the ones who have saved my life. Before the children, I didn't have anything to look forward to. My biggest fear is that my children will grow up and leave me. I now know that that's not the way I should look at life. I've been able to teach myself to read and write to some degree. I've learned to use a computer and have found other interests and hobbies that I would like to pursue, but I continue to spend most of my time away from other people. What Brother Fitzgerald and Brother Best have done to me cannot be changed. I look at my life and wonder what I could have become and what contribution I could have given to society. As it stands now, I feel like I have led a wasted life. It is said that I am a survivor, but I do not feel that way. I am a victim. I don't have any faith. The church and everything it stands for is a demon to me. I believe in God, but I don't believe in the way that man has portrayed God. I believe it has been built on lies. What happened to me when I was a child has been ingrained into me. I don't understand how the offenders can portray themselves to be good when they're also doing evil. Similarly, I feel that the institutions responsible for them do not care appropriately at the time and have very blatantly and reluctantly acknowledged responsibility for the harm caused by their own. Recommendations. I think institutional child sex abuse has split the Ballarat community into factions. Some people are starting to talk to survivors about it and are starting to understand the impact. There are others in the community that block it out completely. It is like it is not even in their vocabulary and they cannot understand. We live in a society where we believe that we protect our children. We send our children off to school. We do this in the utmost trust. But when there is no laws to protect them and the trust has been destroyed, the laws have to be changed so this or anything like this will never be allowed to happen again. There is no real way to measure the damage that has been done. In 2013, I made recommendations about law reform to the Victorian Parliamentary Inquiry into the handling of child sex abuse in religious and other organisations. I would like to see the following changes made to the law and to the response of the institutions to child sexual abuse around Australia. A. All organisations should be subject to mandatory reporting laws as per current obligations for those working in schools. Mandatory reporting should include clergy and religious. B. Regular feedback and review should be embedded in the redress process to ensure complaints and service delivery is at the appropriate high level. Recognise that spiritual damage is a critical element of harm caused. This is very important. D. Recognise that family members of victims are secondary victims and need a practical approach. What happened in the past can't be undone, but for the families, kids, the husbands, the wives and all the others that are there, they'll be they've been impacted too, and they have suffered. Sometimes more. There should also be support for the families of those who have lost family members through suicide and other issues related to the abuse. Psychiatry and psychology. I always have
Psychiatric or psychological?
Yeah, very hard words for me to say. Psychiatry and psychology testing of all church current personnel, including those currently in training for religious life. Funding for victims of child sexual abuse to seek historic caseworkers. Acknowledgement that the required pastoral care in the field is specialised and schools be provided to victims of appropriately qualified and independent personnel at no cost to the complainants. Independence is important. The statute of limitations need to be amended to allow the historical sex abuse claims. The law needs to be amended so that the institutions, including the Catholic Church, are capable of being sued. The property trust legislation in each state needs to be amended to prevent the Church or any other authority from protecting its assets from civil claims or legal proceedings. The laws around vicarious liability need to be amended so that priests and other religions are treated as employees, and therefore church authorities can be held responsible for child sex abuse committed by those who are engaged in the church. There must be no There must be no organisation or persons above the law. The world looks at us as a leading country in many ways. The children are our future. Without them, what is the point? I implore you to please get it right.
Thank you. So I have nothing further.
Does anyone else have any questions? Thank you, Mr. BAP. Thank you for your statement. You're now excused.